Okay, welcome back to the channel, modelers. So, on my last video, I had a couple of comments. One was from Jim Paul Jr., and one of them was from Boyd of TrekWorks. And both of them brought up something that is something I haven't really thought about in a long time, and that was wiring in series versus parallel. You can do either. Series tends to be a little more clean, whereas parallel is a little more reliable. And they were suggesting that I actually wire this in parallel rather than in series. So rather than just say, no, I'm just going to keep going with what I'm doing, I thought, that's actually something that would be beneficial to show the people out there who are wanting to see how this is done. So I ripped up all the wiring and I redid it in parallel. So as you can see, what I had done before for the LED tape going around the edges is I had run jumpers from one to the next, which basically you're just taking a piece of LED tape and you're cutting it up and connecting it with wiring rather than having it as one big piece. But the problem with that is if, let's say, this wire here decided to pop loose, one of the positives popped loose, then these two would still work, but every single one of the others would go out, would be dark. I usually get around that by putting a little bit of hot glue over the connection so that doesn't happen. So when you do things in parallel, what you do is each segment gets their own wiring, and then they all combine in the center. So that's what I've done here, is I've pulled up all the wiring and wired each one separately to go to the center, where your power coming in from the secondary hull will just attach here, and all of them will light up separately. So this is definitely a good way to do it. Doing it in series, if that's the way you want to do it, you can do it that way too. Either one is fine. I've done ships both ways. I tend to kind of go in series just because it's cleaner. I don't like having wiring all over the inside of my saucer, even though I don't really look in there much. It makes it a lot easier when it's time to close it up. There's not this to contend with. But at the same time, I can understand, you don't want all of these to go out if you lose a connection over here. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it in parallel just for the sake of this video series. But again, you can do it whichever way you feel comfortable doing. So that said, that's basically how you do it. I did these four segments over on this side. I had meet over here, and then these over here I had meet over here, and then I soldered them together. So and I did the same for the negative side here. So I did leave these in series. These are the lighting up the rec deck here. If they go out, oh well. It's not as big a deal, but the rest of them are in parallel. So right, now that we've done that, it's time to start looking at doing the navigation lights. So I'm also going to put my strip lighting in here that light up the bottom windows around the lower sensor dome. So we will get that all squared away. So sit tight, and I will be back after adding some more lighting to this. Welcome back, everyone. So one of the things I just did was I went out and I light blocked the edge of the saucer using black primer, and then I went to paint it with white primer, and I ran out of white primer. Naturally, that's kind of the way it goes. Curse is. So what I decided to do instead was to mount up the navigation lights. Now the holes that they provide along the edge of the saucer are really, really small. There isn't much that fits in there. They're usually designed just for the kit parts, but what I do is I use these little 2mm lighthouses that Jerry sells, and then I widen all the holes to 2mm. So I use a 1/16 inch drill bit on my handy-dandy Dremel, and then from there I'm able to kind of hog out the center of these holes while still leaving some of the detail around the edge. And when you do that, you can put an LED in just perfectly fine. Here's one of the holes, and if you look, if I can get it mounted in there from the back side, and of course I'm gonna have to look. Hold on, I promise. Not bad. Here we go. So when you mount it in there, you can actually push it and mount it exactly flush with the top. And that's kind of what you want, is to mount it flush and then use hot glue on the back side to hold it in. And you have an LED light. You mount all 5 of those. You have a red and a green on the sides, and then white ones in the back and a white one on the front on the top. The lower you have a red, green, and a white. So yeah, you just mount these flush in here, and then you don't have these big giant light bulbs sticking up. That's one of the mistakes I made on my first one. Was you had 3mm LEDs, so I drilled all the holes out and stuck a 3mm LED in there, and that was that. And that doesn't work out very well. So then once I get all my LEDs figured out and get them all mounted, I use one of these for the lighting, the actual lighting and flashing. This is an Arduino Nano. These can be had for a few dollars. They're really, really inexpensive. And I've written a sketch for it to allow it to have different rates on 2 different LEDs. So the nav lights can go slower than the strobe, and they all connect to here just nicely. So I have a spare one here. I actually was running low, and I was able to get another one here. So this is going to be my light source for the navigation and strobe lights. So I'm going to load up the sketch on here, and I'll connect it to a breadboard and show you how that works and how easy it is to set up an Arduino to do something as simple as this. This is a very simple sketch to do, and we'll get it so that you can kind of get a better idea of how this is set up. So I will be right back with that. And welcome back, modelers. So here's the Arduino Nano. Oops, and I just unplugged one of the Dealy Webbers. That's no good. We'll plug it back in. Okay. So how I have this set up right now is I have 9, 10, and 11 on the nav lights, and the reason I've separated them out is there are too many to have all of them on one pin. You can do a maximum of 40 milliamps per pin, or 200 milliamps for the entire board. So I've had pretty good luck with splitting most of them up between 2 of them, and then having a third one for the red. The red has a different resistance, so you kind of have to worry about that a little bit. And then I also have a flasher circuit for the strobes, and since there's only 4 bulbs for that, I just put them all on the same pin, and it works just fine. So that's basically how you hook it up. Right now I've got it connected via USB to my Macintosh, and when you put it in the model, there's actually a positive and a negative. The positive can take up to from 5 to 12 volts or something like that. So you can just plug it into your circuit, and it will come on whenever you power on the model. So that's basically it. It's pretty slick, and it keeps trying to tuck underneath the entire breadboard here, which isn't good. There we go. So that's a slick little piece of technology, and you basically write out. I actually borrowed this sketch from someone online, a Jack Christensen. Thanks, Jack. And then I changed the timings to better suit what I prefer, and I also dropped the brightness down to 10%. It looks really washed out on the video, but in reality, it's actually fairly dim. You want it to be fairly dim so that it's not blindingly flashing, really, really, really brightly. You want it to be pretty minimal, mostly because the ship is only again only 1/350 scale. It's not humongous, so you want the lighting to be in scale as well. So anyway, I will be back once I get this installed and we can actually look at it in the ship. So I'll be right back. Okay, everyone, welcome back. I thought I would leave this video off with a kind of a teaser of what's to come, but as you can see, the nav lights are working all the way around, and that's off of the Arduino Nano, and it's working flawlessly. That's exactly what we want. So the next video will start with the bridge. There it is. So I'm going to mount the LED and mount the strobe in here, and we're going to get it light blocked and everything so that we can attach it and basically have it as kind of integrated into the whole thing. The other things I need to do are the impulse engines and the impulse crystal, and then the top of the saucer will be complete, so I'll have to move to the bottom. The bottom, you have the lower sensor dome lights and the navigation lights on it as well, so that one's not too bad to do. So I figured this would be a good place to stop and kind of show where we are. The only thing I need to do now is do some wire tidying inside. It's starting to get really full of wiring, but that happens. You just have to keep it as neat as you can, and I tend to use hot glue to tack everything down so that it's not so messy. I actually need to do that on this one right now. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this bit of putting the wiring in the saucer, and stay tuned. There will be more. So happy modeling, everyone.